Welcome to another episode of Software Explorations, Concepts, and Overviews, hosted by yours truly, Tech Coach Ralph. In today's episode, we are going to a long awaited topic that many people have been wanting me to touch on. That is API testing, application programming interface. We are going to do a deep dive in it. You've seen me use APIs in the past, but I've never really focused in on it. But from popular demand, we are going to jump into everything about APIs. Today's going to be part one. We're going to just have an introduction to APIs, what they are, things like that. But without further ado, let's jump in to our presentation and we'll take it from there. All right, let's get into it. So, like I said, our topic of today, application programming interface, better known widely as APIs. So, our agenda for today, we're going to get the definition of APIs. We are going to have an introduction. What are they used for? Who uses APIs? The type of APIs, the components that make up an API, some API examples, and how, you definitely want to stay till the end, how we can get some practical experience using APIs, which will lead into our next part of this next week, where we're talking about how do we test APIs. We're not going to get into how to build APIs because that is more on the software development part, but maybe at some point we will, but not right now. But we're definitely going to work on how to interact with it, which in the future we'll get into how to actually test API strategies around that. And we will be having some live streams around it as well. So you definitely want to tune in to the next few weeks. So let's get the show on the road. All right. So what exactly is an API? So first and foremost, API stands for Application Programming Interface. In the context of APIs, the word application refers to any software with a distinct function. Interface can be thought of as a contract of service between two applications. So how two applications interact with one another. This contract defines how the two communicate with each other using request and response. So to break down request and response real quick, you have one application that sends to another. So application A sends to application B, hey, I want this information. Application B says, okay, here's the information that you asked for. Or application A says, hey, I want to add this information to your inventory database, etc. And then application B sends back a response saying, got it, consider it, done, it has been added. All right. So that's just a quick way to break down how, what an API is, the definition of APIs. So why are APIs so important? Why is it such a hot topic? And when I say hot topic, hotter topic than the store in the mall, all right? So why is it such a hot topic? So it has integration, efficiency, innovation, and an amazing ecosystem. And we're going to break each one of those down next. So integration. APIs enable different software systems to seamlessly integrate and work together. For example, a weather app might use an API from various sources to gather real-time weather data and display it to users. So, an example, you can have this weather app that they're referring to. It can pull data from all over the world. It might be able to pull it from one source that's saying, okay, this is the current weather in this location, maybe from another API, from something in Europe, maybe from another API, something in Australia, and then it can say, hey, what about the next 10-day forecast? It can probably pull it from there too. So many different uses for how APIs integrate with one another. Now, the efficiency part. Instead of reinventing the wheel, meaning creating the same thing over and over and over again, developers can leverage existing APIs to add powerful features and functionalities to their own application. So it's kind of like a framework, but you can take an existing API and you can integrate it within what you have, with something that you're building. This saves time and resources. And if we know, time is the most valuable resource that there is. Next up, innovation. APIs fuel innovation by allowing developers to build on top of existing platforms and services. So it's kind of like having a template and you say, hey, I am going to add to this. Think of how third-party developers create plugins and extensions for platforms like WordPress or Shopify using their APIs. So we just easily plug into WordPress, Shopify, Facebook, Google, and if you've seen any of the work that we've done, whether we're using Terraform or Flutter or just doing regular testing, we are always using APIs. I use APIs every single day. What are APIs used for? So, APIs allow different software systems to communicate and share data with each other. Developers use APIs to build custom applications by integrating functionalities and services from other platforms or services. And that means you can use the Facebook API, you can use the Google API, you can use the X API, and then you can make them do different things, work together. So, a quick example, let's say you have a content publishing platform and you say, okay, I want to publish this content to Facebook, Google, Reddit, X, LinkedIn, Instagram, and this platform that you're using, it integrates with the APIs of all of those services to on how to publish content to their platforms. So that is like one of the core functionalities that you can be using APIs for. So in addition to what APIs are used for, APIs provide access to vast amounts of data from various sources, empowering developers to build applications that harness this data for analysis, visualization, or decision making. So you can pretty much build anything using APIs. APIs enable automation by allowing software systems to interact programmatically, streamlining workflows and improving efficiency. APIs play a crucial role in IoT ecosystems by IoT stands for Internet of Things ecosystem by facilitating communication between connected devices and applications. An example of that, when you think about Siri, for example, or you think about Amazon Alexa or your Google Home, and you're saying, I can't say it right now because then the device is going to start listening and do something, but you say, hey, device, can you find this for me or play this song, etc. It's going to make an API call to, let's say, the Google Music API, for instance, and then it's going to find that song and it's going to play it back on your device, the connected device. So that is another example. Everything you do, every single thing that you do, there's an API connected to it. So who in the world uses these APIs? So developers, enterprises and businesses, startups and entrepreneurs, service providers, governments and public sectors, institutional education or education institutions, nonprofit organizations, consumers, aka every single person uses APIs for one purpose or another. Consumers, they are indirect users of APIs because they are the beneficiaries of APIs, but they're not the ones who are like directly using APIs. But all these other institutions and people, they are actively using APIs to be able to facilitate the work that they need done. So, what are some types of APIs? So, we have RESTful APIs, we have SOAP APIs, we have GraphQL APIs, WebSocket APIs, gRPC, and there are tons of other more, but those are the most common ones. I mean, I've used SOAP APIs in the past. They're not as common as they used to be. RESTful APIs are probably the most common, and then I've been seeing a lot of GraphQL, which I am anxious to get into GraphQL. I can't wait to, because I know they use it at my job, but I've never really used it before. So I can't wait to start. We're going to dip and dabble in GraphQL as well. And we're just going to just get more familiar with APIs as a whole over the next coming weeks in these software explorations, concept, and overviews, as well as in our live streams on Thursday night. So, what are RESTful APIs? So, RESTful stands for Representational State Transfer APIs, which are widely used for web services and follows principles of statelessness and uniform resource identifiers (URIs). All right, and that might not make much sense now, but as we get into it, it'll start being a little bit more clear. Next up, we have SOAP APIs. So SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol APIs, which uses XML, while usually REST APIs are going to be using a JSON type protocol. And there's many different type of things you can send to, or JSON format. Well, and there's many different other ways you can send it as text and things like that. But SOAP itself is going to be using XML for message format and are commonly used in enterprise level applications. In addition, think about with SOAP, think about it as it uses the format, as I said, XML, but has what they call an envelope, which it's going to have all the information in an envelope, and then it's going to send the request, and then you get it back, and you get it back in an envelope as well. and then you open that envelope. Like, it's really thinking about like a post office format. And you open that envelope and it has the content in there. We will probably be looking into soap a little bit, although it's not like commonly popular and what you'll be using on a day to day. But we can still explore it when we get to that point on our live stream. All right, let's get over to GraphQL. So GraphQL is a query language for APIs that provides a more efficient and flexible alternative to REST. And so we definitely want to jump into GraphQL to get a good understanding of that. I'm still trying to grasp GraphQL as a whole, but that is going to be an awesome, awesome investigation coming up very, very soon. So now, what makes up an API? What are the components of an API? So an API contains, and we're going to get into each one of these individually, but let's just go high level real quick. So APIs can consist of endpoints, methods or operations, request and response. We touched on that a little bit. Parameters, authentication slash authorization, data formats, error handling, and of course, we can't live without documentation. So let's talk about endpoints. Endpoints are specific URLs, uniform resource locators, or URIs, uniform resource identifiers, that define the entry point for interacting with the API. So pretty much what's the address? Where do you have to send the request to in order to be able to successfully interact with that API? Endpoints typically represent a resource or a specific operation that can be performed on the resource, right? Next up, methods and operations. Methods or operations define the action that can be performed on the resource exposed by the API. Common HTTP methods used for APIs include the GET request, retrieve data from the server, POST request to send data to the server or to create a new resource, the PUT request to update an existing resource on the server, delete to remove a resource, and patch to partially update a resource. And I've seen put and patch used kind of like interchangeably, but from what I'm reading here, put is to mainly update the entire existing resource, while patch is going to be updating a part of that resource, but not the whole entire thing. So, for instance, if you have if you were to do a post to create something new, then you need to update the whole entire thing. You can do a put where it's just going to update that. But then if you have to update like maybe one or two parts of it, then you can use a patch. But we'll definitely investigate that as we get there. So what's next? Request and responses. So requests and responses are the messages exchanged between clients, consumer of the API, and servers, provider of the API. So think about that. The client is the consumer and the server is the provider when interacting with the API. Requests typically include information such as headers, parameters, and payloads, the data that's sent to the client, from the client to the server. Responses contain status codes, headers, and the payload, the data, returned from the server to the client in response to a request. So they're just interacting with each other. You send the request, you get a response. And based on what you send is going to be based on the response that you get. Now, parameters. Parameters are additional data sent with a request to specify details such as filters, search criteria, or configuration options. Parameters can be passed in the URL via query parameters, in the request body, such as request parameters, or as part of the request header. So many different ways to send parameters. Next up, authentication slash authorization. Authentication mechanisms are used to verify the identity of clients accessing the API, while authorization mechanisms control what actions clients are allowed to perform on the resources. So if you remember, when we're going through our GRC stuff and our IAM, Identity Access Manager, we're talking about authentication and authorization through all our cybersecurity things. And this is a part of APIs. So authentication is who can access. Authorization is what can you do once you have access. So common authentication methods include API keys, OAuth tokens, and JWT tokens, JSON web tokens. And that's how the access is controlled. And inside of those API keys, OAuth tokens, it'll tell you who's allowed and what access and permission do they have. That is configured based on like wherever the configuration is set. Next up, we have data types. APIs use standard data types or standard data formats to represent and exchange data between clients and servers. Common data formats include JSON, JavaScript, object notation, and XML. extensible markup language. The API documentation specifies the expected data formats for requests and responses. And that's why it's so important to have API documentation. It just drives me crazy when we do not have it. Next up, error handling. APIs define mechanisms for handling errors and communicating error conditions to clients. This includes HTTP status codes, error messages, and error payloads returned in response to invalid requests or server-side errors. And you have errors that can go from 400 code to 500 code, and we'll dive into that as we get there as well. Lastly, and most importantly, documentation, which people hate to do, but it is so important. API documentation provides detailed information about the API, including endpoints, methods, parameters, authentication requirements, data formats, and examples of usage. And in our example at the end, we will be looking at some API documentation. Good documentation is essential for developers to understand how to use the API effectively and build applications that integrate with it. Now, practical experience. How can you gain some practical experience? So I'm going to give you the tools that you're going to need to do that, and then we will do a not a live example because this isn't live, but I'm going to go and use the tools that I have listed here. Use rapidapi.com so we can find an API, and then we can actually make some requests and get some responses and go from there. So the tools you're going to need, you're going to need either Postman or Insomnia. And the reason I say Postman or Insomnia because we're just going to do this manually. As we get into the testing aspect and start doing some automated tests, we will have that. We'll be using like our regular tools to do that. But for now, make sure you have Postman or Insomnia installed, and then create an account with rapidapi.com. And we're going to choose an API, and I'll choose one in in the demo. And then we are going to get the endpoint, the request body, any type of authentication slash authorization that we need in order to send and receive responses from the API. All right, so let's look at some examples of APIs. All right, so we have social media APIs where you can, if you've ever seen on somebody's website where they have a picture from Instagram, or they have tweets that they've posted that are showing up on their website. That is because they are using the APIs for those social media sites such as Instagram or X, right? And that's how they're able to pull that into their websites. How about payment gateways? So you're able to pay with PayPal or Google Pay or Amazon Pay, Apple Pay directly on a website. That is because, or Stripe. Let's not forget Stripe because Stripe's API is very popular. That is because people like the developers are going to integrate with those APIs in order to send the payment information through there, and then it gives them a response that the payment successfully went through, and we don't have to go through a third party site to make it happen. Map APIs. So the same way you can have you can have an API to connect to a map to get directions, to show a map on a website. As long as you just have to connect to the API, such as the Google Maps API. That's probably like one of the most popular ones. There's also, I think it's called Open Map. But and you'll see whenever you see a map on a website, that means you're connecting to the API of that map provider. And then authentication APIs. If you ever gone to a website and it says log in with Google or log in with Apple, log in with GitHub, log in with Facebook, all of those things, those are API connections that are connecting to the respective authenticator. And then once it says yes, create this account, it goes back, it sends it back to the website saying yes, this person successfully created an account. And then you have your account created, and you can just every time you go to log in, you just click login with your provider of choice, and you're going to be all good to go. So in conclusion, we spoke about the definition of APIs. We had our introduction to APIs. We talked about the type of APIs there are. We get some API examples, and we are about to get into our practical example of how you can get started playing around with APIs, getting a little bit more familiar. So this is not over. So we are going to. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go back to full screen, and hopefully you found this presentation very, very helpful. But we're not done. But wait, there's more. We are about to go into using an API with Postman and how we can actually connect using the endpoint, send a request, and get a response. And we're going to try that out. We're going to be using Rapid API as I mentioned, and we'll go from there. All right. So just stick around, and we are going to go to that now. So let's get into our demonstration on how we can gain practical examples using APIs. So I'm going to be using the website Rapid API so that we can start querying APIs, sending requests, getting responses. They're mostly going to be GET requests for now, but it'll give you a good working example of how you can retrieve data. And then we'll have some more examples as we get into our live streams. But this is a good starting point. All right, so we're going to go to rapidapi.com, and I'm just going to, I already have an account. If you don't have an account yet, make sure you go through the sign up process, but I'm going to click on sign in, and then I'm just going to log in with Google, log in with my account. And here we're going to get to the different, like you get provided with a bunch of different APIs you can choose from. I'm just gonna go with business for now, and I will be doing the. I'll just choose realty in US. You can choose any one that you want, but I'll choose realty in US. And it gives you a quick explanation about what the actual API is about. Get autocomplete suggestions by city, ward, street name to pass in other endpoints. This endpoint also helps. So this is this particular endpoint, right? But this API helps to query properties for sale, rent, sold, etc. And then it gives us like what the different endpoints are. So if we look at like properties and we say we look at, let's see, details. So this one is saying if we look over here, it's requiring the property ID. Okay, so if we look at this one right here, under properties, and then it's a post, as we spoke about, like gets and posts. So this one is a post, and then the endpoint is going to be properties slash v3 version 3 slash list. And if we look at over here, this is our request URL. We have our endpoint listed here. And inside of the request body, would be sending something like this. And and we're just passing the postal code that we would be searching for. And then the status would be not websites, properties that are for sale or ready to build. If we look at the schema, there's nothing here. Oh, interesting. There's nothing here, but maybe they just didn't put all the details. But here we can say how you want to sort it. But in anything, if we just copy this and we send this request, we should be able to get a list of properties returned. So let's give it a try. And I'm going to subscribe for the basic plan. So for this one, you get 500 requests a month for free, right? So I'm just going to subscribe to that. So something to be cognizant of how many requests you're sending, and you can sign up for different APIs and to do different tests with it. But if you go over a certain amount, then they'll start charging you for that. So you want to be careful with that. But oh, this one they won't even charge you more. There's a hard limit of 500, so that's good. So if you hit 500, you won't be able to make any more requests. Some of them like they'll tell you like after you hit a certain amount, then they'll start charging you. So just be cognizant of that. But now let's go back to the endpoints. And I am going to go to properties again in this list. And I'm going to say, all right, so I'm going to put these side by side. So that way I have, um, so this is Postman. You guys should be familiar with, you should already have it downloaded, already be familiar with it. And I'm going to I'm going to type in the rapid, yes, and I'm going to put in the endpoint, which is properties slash v3 slash list. And I'm going to change that to a post method. And now we look at the headers here. So we're going to go over to headers. Let me try to move this as well. All right, so there goes our host. All right, we're going to change this method because it's a post method. This is a post method. We're going to change this to post. We're going to paste in the we're going to put in HTTPS // and we're going to put in the URL that it has in here. So it says realtynus.p.rapidapi.com/properties/v3/list. And then we're going to go to our headers and we're going to put content type is application/JSON. And our X rapid API key is going to be the key that we have from Rapid API. I'm going to copy that into here. And then we're going to say the X Rapid API host. And that's going to be realty in us.p.rapidapi.com. All right. And now we're going to go to our body. We're going to change that to a raw format and JSON. And we are going to copy this body right here, this JSON body, and we're going to paste it into here. Let's make it bigger. And there goes our request. So now if we were to let's change this zip code, right, to 90218. Remember the TV show from way back in the days? I never watched it, but I always saw a lot of advertising about it. So we put it here, and now if we send this request, we should get some type of response. And We got a response, no results though. So why is that? That's interesting. Um, or if let's say we change it to another zip code. Zip code I used to live in when I was a child, 33063. No, it's not. And here we have a bunch of listings that come up. So so nothing comes back as for sale or ready to build in 90218 zip code. However, let's try in 33163, the zip code I used to live in as a child, and let's see if we get any results from that. And here we are. We get a bunch of results. So we have, so we get back this JSON with a property ID, a listing ID, the status that it's for sale, the company who's listing it, CRV Realty, the location, the address, like the city that it's in, the address, 850 North Miami Avenue, Unit W1102, the latitude and longitude, the Google Maps to it, the county. Yep, you pretty much get all the details of the house, like 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, 848 square feet. Pretty much all the information, like the name of the advertiser, um, different flags that might be on it. So much information, right? And then you can get a bunch of properties that way. So it's something like only one came out, but this is just a test API. So I would definitely recommend that you pick an API and give it a try, see what you're able to get, and when we get on the live stream together, then we'll continue playing around with this type of stuff, and get into like how to start testing the APIs and things like that. Right. So hopefully that helped you get started. It gives you a location, a website where you can start getting some APIs that you can start getting familiar with, sending requests, receiving responses, how to authenticate, how to like structure the endpoint, how to how to put in your request, things like that. Very, very important stuff that you are definitely going to need as we get into testing APIs and things like that. So whatever it is, do not don't hesitate to try things out, get involved, get familiar, and I will see you on the live stream as we continue to dip and dabble into getting familiar with APIs and eventually testing APIs and writing automated tests for APIs. All right. So hopefully you found this information on APIs very helpful, useful, informative, etc. And if you And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to leave me a comment. If there's anything you want me to expound on, definitely let me know. In the coming weeks, we're going to continue talking about APIs and getting more into the API testing aspect. So definitely leave me a comment and I will make sure to address that either in a comment or in a video, whatever the case, or on a live stream, whatever the case may be. I am here to help you to grow and get a better understanding of APIs. So on your way out, do me a big, big favor. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you can know every time that we go live or drop new content. And if you are in need of one-on-one coaching, go over to www.techcoachralph.dev where you can sign up for a coaching plan with me and we will get working to get you to that next level. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully this helped you and I will see you guys on the live stream tomorrow night. And we'll be back at it again with another software explorations, concept, and overviews next week. Same time, same place. This is Tech Coach Ralph, and we are out.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.